The sun blazed mercilessly over the dusty highway rest stop somewhere between Phoenix and Tucson, casting long shadows across the parked motorcycles that gleamed like chrome sentinels. Inside the diner, 6 leather-clad bikers sat around a corner booth. Their intimidating appearance, scarred knuckles, thick beards, and patches covering every inch of their vests, causing other patrons to keep their distance. They'd been riding together for 15 years, brothers not by blood but by choice, united by the open road and a code most people would never understand. What those nervous diners couldn't see beneath the tough exterior were the hearts that had been broken, rebuilt, and hardened by life's cruelest lessons. These men had seen darkness, survived it, and emerged with an unspoken mission to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. They just didn't know that mission was about to be tested in a way none of them could have imagined. Marcus "Tank" Patterson, the group's unofficial leader, was mid-story about a near miss with a deer when the diner's door burst open. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, stumbled inside. Her blonde hair was matted with sweat and tears, her pink t-shirt torn at the shoulder, and her small feet were bleeding through her worn sneakers. But it was her eyes that stopped everyone cold. Wide, terrified, desperate eyes that had seen something no child should ever witness. She scanned the room frantically, her chest heaving with panicked breaths until her gaze landed on the bikers. Without hesitation, she ran straight toward them, weaving between tables as startled customers pulled back. The little girl threw herself at Tank's table, her small hands gripping the edge as sobs racked her tiny frame. "Please," she cried, her voice breaking. "Please save my mom. He's hurting her! He's going to kill her!" The diner fell silent. Every fork stopped midair, every conversation died, every eye turned toward the corner booth. Tank was on his feet instantly, his 6'4" frame towering over the child as he knelt down to her level. His rough hands that had seen their share of fights, gently held her shaking shoulders. "Slow down, sweetheart," he said, his gravelly voice softening in a way that surprised even some of his brothers. "Where's your mom?" The girl pointed frantically toward the parking lot. "The blue car." "He locked me out, but I saw through the window. He has a belt, and he's hitting her, and she's not fighting back anymore." Fresh tears streamed down her dirt-streaked face. "Please, she told me to run and get help." Tank's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching beneath his beard. He looked up at his brothers, Razor, Ghost, Preacher, Tiny, and Wrench, and saw his own thoughts reflected in their eyes. Every one of them had a story. Every one of them had a reason they rode these roads looking for redemption. Razor stood up, his hand instinctively checking his phone to dial 911. "Police are 20 minutes out in this dead zone," he said grimly. "Maybe more." "We don't have 20 minutes, Ghost said quietly, already moving toward the door. Tank looked down at the little girl. "What's your name, honey?" "Emma," she whispered. "Emma, I need you to stay here with Mabel." He nodded toward the diner's owner, a grandmother type who was already rushing over with a first aid kit. "We're going to get your mom. I promise you." The 6 bikers moved as one fluid unit, their boots thundering across the diner floor. Customers who'd been frightened of them moments ago now watched with something like hope. Outside, the Arizona heat hit them like a physical force, but they barely noticed. Emma had pointed to a battered blue sedan parked in the far corner of the lot, away from the other vehicles, strategically hidden from the diner's windows. As they approached, they could hear it, the sickening sound of leather on flesh, a woman's muffled cries, a man's angry voice spewing venom and threats. Tank's hands curled into fists, but Preacher put a hand on his shoulder. Despite his nickname, Preacher was the least religious among them, but he was the voice of reason. "Smart, not angry," Preacher murmured. "We do this right." Tank nodded, forcing himself to think tactically. Through the car's rear window, they could see a man in his 30s, his face contorted with rage, holding a belt over a woman curled in the back seat. She was covering her head with her arms, her body language speaking of someone who'd endured this horror before. Tank tried the door handle, locked, as Emma had said. The man inside finally noticed them and froze, his belt suspended midair. For a moment, their eyes met through the glass, and Tank saw what he always saw in men like this: cowardice masquerading as strength. "Open the door," Tank said, his voice carrying despite the closed windows. It wasn't loud, but it held the weight of absolute certainty. The man's face shifted from rage to calculation. He was trapped, outnumbered, and he knew it. But men like him rarely gave up control willingly. Instead, he grabbed the woman's hair, yanking her up. She cried out, and her face became visible for the first time, swollen, bloodied. "Defeated! Back off, or I swear I'll—" the man started. But he never finished. Wrench, the quietest and most mechanical-minded of the group, had already circled to the driver's side. With a tool from his pocket and the precision of someone who'd spent 40 years working on engines, he had the lock jimmied in seconds. The door flew open, and before the abuser could react, Ghost, a former Army Ranger who'd seen 2 tours in Afghanistan, had him by the collar, yanking him out of the car with controlled force. The man hit the pavement hard, but immediately scrambled to his feet, his hands balling into fists. "You don't know who you're messing with. That's my wife. This is none of your—" "Wrong answer," Razor said, stepping between the man and the car, where Tiny and Preacher were already helping the injured woman. The abuser took a swing at Razor, a wild haymaker fueled by rage and desperation. Razor sidestepped it easily, and Tank caught the man's arm, twisting it behind his back and forcing him to his knees. It was over in seconds, the kind of efficient takedown that came from years of watching each other's backs. "You're going to sit here and not move a muscle," Tank said quietly, his grip firm but not cruel. "Police are on their way. You so much as twitch wrong and my restraint goes away. Understand?" The man's bravado crumbled and he nodded, suddenly looking small and pathetic. Behind them, Preacher was talking softly to the woman, whose name they learned was Sarah. She was conscious but dazed, her arms wrapped around herself protectively. Tiny, whose nickname was ironic given his imposing size, had the gentlest touch as he used clean napkins from the diner to tend to the worst of her wounds. "Your daughter's safe," Preacher told her. "She's inside with Mabel, brave little girl you've got there." At the mention of Emma, Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears, not of pain, but of something else. Love, relief, gratitude. "She ran?" Sarah's voice was hoarse. "She got away?" "She got help," Tank corrected, still keeping watch on the subdued man. "She saved you." Sirens finally pierced the desert air, growing louder. 2 patrol cars and an ambulance pulled into the lot within minutes, and the scene shifted into official procedure. The bikers gave their statements, their calm professionalism surprising the responding officers until the senior deputy recognized Tank. "Patterson?" The deputy's eyebrows rose. "Didn't expect to see you playing hero?" Tank's expression didn't change. "Just doing what needed doing, Miller." As paramedics loaded Sarah into the ambulance and officers handcuffed her husband, Emma came running from the diner. She bypassed the police, the EMTs, everyone, and ran straight to Tank, wrapping her small arms around his leg. "You saved her," Emma sobbed into his jeans. "You really saved her." Tank picked her up, this mountain of a man cradling this tiny girl like she was made of glass. "No, sweetheart, you saved her. You were brave enough to ask for help. Don't ever forget that." Emma was allowed to ride in the ambulance with her mother, but before she climbed in, she looked back at the 6 bikers standing in a row, an unlikely lineup of guardian angels in leather and chrome. "Thank you," she said, her voice small but clear. "All of you," they nodded, these hard men with soft hearts, and watched the ambulance drive away. Later, after the police finished their reports and the tow truck hauled away the blue sedan as evidence, the 6 brothers stood by their bikes. The sun was setting now, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple. None of them had touched their coffee, and their lunch sat cold back in the diner. "We riding out?" Wrench asked, already knowing the answer. "Yeah," Tank said, pulling on his gloves. "But first stop is the hospital." "Want to make sure they're okay?" No one disagreed. 3 weeks later, Tank received a letter at the address they'd left with the hospital. Inside was a drawing from Emma, 6 stick figures with motorcycles under a rainbow, all of them smiling. Beneath it, In careful 7-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "My mom says angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have motorcycles. Thank you for being our angels." Tank pinned that drawing to the wall of his garage, where it stayed for years. A reminder that sometimes the best way to outrun your own demons is to stand between someone else and theirs.